What's good, Rikin here with another episode of the Mortal Intern. And on today's video, I want to talk about how I got an internship at Toyota. I'm really excited to kind of talk about this one because this was probably the most normal, quote unquote, recruiting process I ever had. So, flashback to sophomore year, and I was looking for an internship. I just spent the prior summer interning at Kamek, and I'd also been working on the furniture business. So that's kind of the two big things I'd had under my belt. And I was looking to find an internship with something that was a little bit bigger. I really loved being at Kamek, and that was kind of a neat place to be, but I wanted to kind of go beyond the startup that I'd been at for about a year. So I was really excited to go to this career fair, and actually this was the first career fair I ever went to. But I went to this career fair, I think I was a bit under the weather, and got my resume printed out, got my fancy little pad folio, and I got all suited up. It's probably the first of many times suiting up for recruiting in the next 2 years from there. But I was really excited to be out there, and I went to the career fair. As soon as I got to the career fair, the first thing I did was just walk around the whole place and figure out what are the booths that are interesting to me, what are the booths that people are congregating at, and what are the booths that I'm interested in and there aren't a lot of people at. And that's really the golden spot. So that's really what I was looking for, because you'll find that there's a lot of companies that you want to talk to, and obviously you don't have enough time to talk to every single company at length. And what you'll find is a lot of people will go to the top 5 big places, the accounting companies, the big consulting companies, the big, oil and gas companies, because we're in Texas and, gas is king over here. So they would go to these big booths and they would spend 30 minutes waiting in line so they can hand their resume to a recruiter who's going to spend like 30 seconds talking to them and then put that resume into the circular filing cabinet. If you're not familiar with what that means, that's just another way of saying recycling bit. So you would see all these people spend 2 hours and probably talk to 2 or 3 people and not really get much talking in anyhow. So what I did instead was I would go around and go to all these booths and figure out what are the places that nobody's really talking to, where the recruiter's just dying to talk to someone. So I would go around. I went to places like HEB. I went to, I think, Whole Foods. I went to UPS, companies that are really important companies, but aren't that sexy to kind of work for, or at least don't seem that sexy off the bat. So I went to those companies and I would talk to them. And I think the 2 big ones that I talked to that day were Matthews Real Estate Group and Toyota. And those are 2 places where I really spent probably a good 15 to 25 minutes talking to each one. Instead of trying to just get 30 seconds of FaceTime with a million people, I talked to 4 or 5 different companies, for at least 10 minutes. And I found 2 companies that I spent at least, 15 to 20 minutes talking to. And I've got my little Toyota, Team Toyota back here, just to prove that I didn't make all this up, that I actually did work for Toyota. I guess I could have just gone online and ordered a bag or a shirt or something like that. But I work for Toyota, and you can look at my LinkedIn, or I think I've also got this little Toyota. This is one of my coolest things I got from that summer. It's like a little Toyota coaster, except it looks like a floor mat from a car. Anyway, just to prove that I did work at Toyota and I'm not just making all this kind of stuff up. So I went to Toyota's booth and I talked to them, and I really started talking to them. And I'm a car guy to a degree. I'm not the kind of person that can tell you specs from every car made in the past 50 years. I can't tell you what the newest Mustang is, though my roommate over here probably could. But what I can do is talk to you about the car industry as a whole, because I'm kind of interested in it. I could talk about what I knew about Toyota from the news, and I just started kind of shooting the shit with the people there. And what I found was there were maybe 1 or 2 other people who would stop by this booth and talk to them, but there weren't a ton of people who were really taking the time to talk to them. Everyone else was kind of crowded around the big KPMG and the Accenture and the Deloitte tables and the Exxon tables, because that's where everyone wants to work, and that's the companies that you've already heard of. Toyota, while people have heard of it, isn't the biggest name when it comes to recruiting, especially for McCombs and UT, and not many people were there. So I started talking to this guy, and it happened to be that I knew a good amount about Toyota, and that's kind of why I was gravitating over there. I started talking to these folks. I talked about a plant. I knew about the fact they just launched a new Camry the year prior, so I started talking about how that was going, and I'd read in the news how there was a new platform that was working. There's something called the Toyota Global Architecture that they worked on a couple of years ago, and that was really new at the time I was recruiting. So all things that show that I knew a bit about the company, that I'd done my homework, and that I wasn't just trying to drop my resume to every single person that was around. And the other thing I talked about was Numi, which is a plant that they had in California, which they shut down a couple of years ago, and I think Tesla now uses that plant. But these were all just interesting things that I talked to this recruiter about. And the recruiter was obviously impressed by the fact that I'd done some homework on it, I knew what the company was about, and I wasn't just trying to hand out resumes to everyone. So the recruiter actually said, you know what? We've already passed our application deadline, but we're doing interviews tomorrow. If you want, we can see if we can squeeze you in. Give me a copy of your resume, give me your phone number, and if we have space, we can squeeze you in tomorrow. And I said, great, here's a copy of my resume, and here's my phone number. And I went ahead and, went to the interview the next day. I was fortunate enough that I got an interview. It was actually a terrible interview, but just because I'd been really sick at the time. But anyhow, things kind of worked out. You can watch all my other videos about how to prepare for an interview, and we can talk about how to really prep for an interview. But the interview went well, and I got the job. A little funny aside, I was actually in the process of buying a car around that same time, and I was looking at a couple different cars, and what I literally did right after I finished that interview was I got a friend to drop me off at the Honda dealership where I'd already scheduled a test drive for the car I was going to end up buying. So it's really funny how I finished up that Toyota interview, talked about how I really wanted to work at Toyota, and literally an hour later, I was sitting at a Honda dealership looking to buy a Honda because that was kind of the car that I was really had my eyes set on. So to recap and to share a couple really insights that you can probably take away from this when you're recruiting is really do your homework when it comes to recruiting. Before you go into that career fair, figure out who's going to be there. Secondly, use a little bit of kind of game theory, right? Like, don't just go to the places that everyone else is swarming. Go to the places that you want to go to, but also don't seem to be getting a lot of attention. That's where you're going to have some chance to do some FaceTime. You're going to have the ability to actually engage in real conversation, ask questions that are meaningful, and hopefully that allows you to build that rapport so that when you see this person again at the next event or when you ask them for an interview, things kind of work out. Again, you've got to remember that at a career fair, you're looking to get a job, and obviously you're stressed about that, but the recruiter is there to get a candidate. If they don't find someone, they failed their mission. So they're looking to get a good candidate. Your goal is to give them as much ammunition so that they can kind of bat for you. I understand it's probably like a terrible analogy. Ammunition and baseball don't go together. Anyways, you get the point that you want to give them as much information as you can and have that conversation. So a few days later when they're deciding to interview you or to potentially hire you, they have enough information that they can make an informed decision.